Today I want to talk about the optimal order of investing based on what experts think and what I've experienced with my own personal finances. And I want to talk about this stuff because I know it can be really overwhelming for people, especially when you're first starting out, right? You don't know the names of the accounts and what they mean. Why is something called a Roth IRA and what's a 401k and a 529? I get it. So I'll do my best to explain what these accounts are, why you should care about them, and then how you can use them. So starting off with number one is an emergency fund. Now, if you don't know what this is, it's essentially a savings account that you keep money in and you do not touch it unless true emergencies happen. And you can kind of think of it like a safety raft on a boat that will keep you alive should your financial ship hit an iceberg and then begin to sink. Now, I want to make this very clear. This savings account is not for buying a new laptop or going on vacation or spending it on a Black Friday sale or one of 17 Amazon Prime Day sales. You can have separate savings accounts for that kind of stuff, but the emergency fund is truly not to be touched unless an actual emergency comes up. And ideally it sits in a high yield savings account like Wealthfront or Marcus by Goldman Sachs. Doesn't really matter which one you pick. The point is that you have a good chunk of money sitting in an account that earns 4% as of right now. And so if you had something like $15,000 in there, every single month it would pay you $50, which is pretty sweet. Now, as far as how much money you should have in your emergency fund, experts, if you look this up, you can Google it. Everybody and their mom says 3 to 6 months of expenses is a good place to be. So if your regular bills like rent, groceries, gas, insurance, all that stuff adds up to, let's say, $4,000 a month, you should have something like 12 grand to $24,000 saved up in your emergency fund. Now, me personally, I like to have a lot more than that saved up because I would rather have more like an entire year to get my life together. If for some reason both my wife and I lost our jobs and we had to start from ground zero, we at least have a year of savings put away so that we have more time to figure things out. So it's totally up to you. This is personal preference, but at least start with a 3-month emergency fund, see how you feel, and then go from there. Number two is getting out of bad debt. So after you have money saved up, the next goal should be getting out of bad debt. And I'm defining bad debt as anything related to consumer debt. So something like a credit card loan or a car loan or personal loans. These typically have really high interest rates and they end up costing you a lot more than you realize over time. And oftentimes they're not even necessary for us in the first place. In fact, I think that's a really bad misconception that people have about money, and they kind of think of it backwards, right? They think if I don't have enough money to buy this certain thing, like a car, for example, I have to get a loan. That's the opposite of what you should be doing. You should be doing everything you can to save up a smaller amount of money and then just buy a crappy car in cash that's going to last the next couple years. And then you could save up for a better car over time, for example. But anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds of that. The point is that if you have credit card loans or car loans, typically you're paying high interest rates, and that's really a recipe to be stuck where you are financially for a really long time until you change your habits, basically. So get rid of this debt as soon as you can, and you can use either the avalanche method or the snowball method. Really, either one works great. So number three, after you've paid off all of your bad debt, is the 401k minimum match. Now, I struggled to put this before paying off bad debt or maybe putting it after. I wasn't sure which one would be the best. I think you could swap these out for whatever works for you and you're going to be just fine. But anyway, a 401k is an investment account that you get at your job, and usually your company gives you some type of match when you put money into it. So typically the match that you see that's pretty standard across the board is that, let's say I put in $6, my company will put in $4 for free, and that's a total of $10. So if you think about it, 4 divided by 6 is 66%. So you're getting a 66% return on your money immediately. That's before that money's even invested. And that's one of the beauties about a 401k is somebody else is putting money into your investment account for you. And again, if you think it's more optimal to not miss out on this free money and put this before paying off your bad debt, by all means, go ahead. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Now, number four is to max out your Roth IRA. So if you don't know, an IRA stands for an individual retirement account, and it comes in two flavors, traditional and Roth. The main difference between these two can get confusing for a lot of people, but if I can just oversimplify for a minute, traditional means that you pay taxes later, and Roth means you pay taxes now. That's it. Now, why does that matter? So I think it matters because typically most of us get paid more money as we get further along in our career because we're getting better at our job and maybe we're getting more promotions. And so I think it makes sense to pay taxes on the smaller salary that we have now instead of paying taxes on a larger salary later. And so that's why I prefer a Roth IRA, because I'm paying taxes on the salary I'm getting now. And then when I'm 50 years old and I have a much bigger salary because I'm better at my job, all of that money has been growing tax-free over time. So when I'm 59 and a half, I get that full amount completely tax-free. Now, some people use a combination of the two depending on how much they get and their income fluctuates. So there's a million exceptions to this rule, but I think that's a good general overview. Now, number five is to max out your HSA if you have one available. So an HSA is a health savings account, and in my opinion, it's one of the best hidden gems of the investment world that exists out there. And a lot of people aren't aware of how incredibly powerful it is because it's a triple tax advantage account and it can act as an extra retirement account in some sense. And I made an entire video breaking this down, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. You can check that video out after this one. But simply put, it's an investment account that you put money into, you can buy investments, those investments grow over time, and then you can use that investment money to pay for your medical expenses. And the whole process is completely tax-free. Now, this is usually offered through your employer, and you have to have a high deductible plan in order to qualify or be eligible for an HSA.
What are you talking about?
So that's one of the biggest downsides, to be honest. Now, that's really crucial to consider because if you get sick a lot or you go to the doctor often, a high deductible plan and therefore getting an HSA might not be optimal for you because you're gonna have to end up paying a lot of money throughout the year before insurance steps in and helps you out. So that's the one major drawback of an HSA, but if you're healthy and you can afford the high deductible plan, I'd recommend going for it because you can really build up an extra nest egg and let investments pay for your medical expenses later on if you do it right. And by the way, I forgot to mention this, oftentimes your employer will help match contributions, kind of like a mini 401k, which is more free money. Okay, number 6 is now to add money into a 529 college savings plan or a UTMA account if you have children. So a 529 savings plan is a tax beneficial plan specifically for your child's education. So you get some tax benefits for putting money in there, and then you can choose between usually 20 and 30 investments based on whatever the administrator of your plan chooses. A UTMA account is a custodial account for your kid, and it's basically like a regular investment account for your children. Now, there aren't any tax benefits that come with this, but because of that, there's more flexibility in what you can actually buy as investments within the account itself. However, the drawback is that if you have money in there and your kid does want to go to college at, let's say, 18 and they apply for financial aid through FAFSA, the amount of money in your UTMA account might affect that a little bit more than, let's say, a 529 plan. So just keep that in mind. Now, number 7 is to max out your 401k. So initially we just put the minimum match so we can get some free money. But now that we've taken care of some other things that are important, we can go ahead and max out our 401k, which as of 2025 is $23,500. Now, your 401k is most likely going to be the largest investment account that you have across everything that you own. And if you have the option to own a Roth 401k and your employer is also giving you a really good match, this is going to be the most bang for your buck. So it's a really good idea if you have the extra money and you can afford it, put as much money into this thing as possible because it's really going to start to snowball once you have a significant amount in there. Now, in terms of what to buy inside the 401k, I'm a big fan of keeping it really simple and just choosing like 2 to 3 funds. So typically I look for anything related to the S&P 500 and the lowest fee possible. And then I'll also add in some type of aggressive growth index fund as well to get maybe some extra gains over time. And I like this approach because I'm young and I have, 30 years to deal with any type of volatility. So I like putting a good amount of money into aggressive growth funds. Now, if I were older, something like 10 to 15 years away from retirement, I might do something like a half stocks, half bonds portfolio, right? Because at first, earlier in life, the goal is to grow my money. But later in life, the goal is going to be to keep what I've grown. And so I never want to risk what I have and need for what I don't have and don't need. Now, number 8 on my list is a 13th house payment. Now, this is where my list differs from a lot of other people's because typically you see a taxable brokerage account or just like a regular investment account right here. But I think that's because the last 10 plus years, mortgage rates have been really low and so have interest rates in general. So it wasn't really worth it to pay off your house early on, but with a 7+% interest rate right now, it makes sense to pay that off a little bit early or at least add extra payments that go straight to the principal and help lower the overall interest that I'm paying on the house. And so for me, for example, if I had a 13th house payment throughout the year, which is about $240 extra every single month on top of the mortgage I'm paying, that brings my entire mortgage down from a 30-year to a 23-year. So I get 7 years shaved off and a ton of interest just by adding $240 every single month. And if you are lucky enough to have a really low interest rate, like 2.5% or 3%, like a ton of people that I know have because they bought houses earlier than me, then this thing's gonna work even faster because the more money you put to it, the more it's gonna go straight to the principal and you'll pay it off sooner. But really, you can also swap this with the next one on the list, which is number 9, a taxable brokerage account. Now, this is last on the list, and if you're really raking in the dough and you're maxing out all of the accounts that I just mentioned and you don't have any debt and you have a good emergency fund, you can put any extra money that you have towards a taxable brokerage account. So think of this like the most basic investment account that exists out there. There's no tax benefits, there's no fancy rules, there's no restrictions on what you can buy. You just put money in there and you buy investments. But keep in mind, because there's no tax benefits or fancy rules, you will have to pay taxes on any capital gains that you have. So basically, if you buy a stock or an ETF, it goes up, and then you sell it, you're gonna have to pay a portion of tax on that. And this always really confused me when I was younger because I thought if I put money into the account and I buy a stock and then I sell it, but I don't take it out of the investment account and bring it to like my bank account where I can actually spend it, I don't pay taxes, right? Wrong. That's how retirement accounts work, but that's not how this one works. So again, if you buy a stock, it goes up and then you sell it for some money, make sure to put some of that money aside to pay taxes later on the next April when you file your taxes so that you're not surprised and then Uncle Sam gets to take stuff that you don't want to give him. And by the way, this whole list is truly the optimal order of investing, right? I know a lot of people don't have all this extra cash to max out every single account and buy all these investments, nor do people really want to do that, right? You can totally spend your money on stuff that you want and not just focus solely on retirement and 59 and a half, right? Because I know a lot of people feel like they're not living if they do that. So be flexible with this, right? If you want to put some money in an IRA, some in a 401k, you don't want to pay off your house early, that's totally fine. It's really up to you and whatever fits your financial situation and the goals that you have for your life and what you want to do. So I'm by no means saying that this is the only way to approach all this stuff, but I at least want to give a decent path to follow if you want to be really strict and you want to fully max out all of this stuff and you want to, build a lot of wealth over time. This is probably a pretty good approach. Of course, I'm biased because it's what I'm doing, but you can do whatever you want. Obviously, you don't need my permission to do that. So I just hope that you use it as a tool to help you reach your goals instead of holding you back. That's my optimal order of investing based on experience, based on my finance degree, based on what experts say. So do with that what you will. Throw out what doesn't work for you. Make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps this channel grow. And that's all I got for today. Peace. Check. Nice. I get it. This stuff can be weird, right? Weird. I guess I'll start over.